All right, another Friday afternoon. This is Rob Brown along with my co-host Gordon Ford. Gordon is going to be calling in on the road today, heading down to Oxford to see Ole Miss play some basketball. And we've got the Snakeskin Cowboy Shane in the studio, and Miss Audrey in producing, and a whole lot going on this weekend. There's a kind of a big football game going on down in Tuscaloosa this weekend, and Alabama and LSU. And we've got a lot of guests coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Mitch Davis, the Rivals.com sports reporter for the University of Memphis, is going to be joining us as he has throughout the season. Talk a lot about last weekend's big win over SMU, game day being here. What a weekend. At 3:30, we're going to be joined by the voice of the Vols, Bob Kessling, and get some insight into Tennessee and their big game up at Lexington, Kentucky tomorrow night at 6:30. That one will be on ESPN. Shane, Vols got to win that game. There's no margin for error. They have to win it. They got to be bowl eligible for the Big Orange Nation. 4 o'clock. We're going to play part of an interview with Lars Anderson, one of the premier sports writers in the country. 20-plus years with Sports Illustrated, now with Bleacher Report. He's based out of Birmingham, but born in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's written several books, Chasing the Bear, talking about Coach Saban, Coach Bryant, who's going to go down as the greatest coach of all time. And we'll be joined again at 4:30 by Tommy Tuberville. Coach will be on to give us insight into all the big games, including Alabama and LSU down in Tuscaloosa. So a lot going on, a lot to talk about. We'd love to hear from you. 901-452-3094 and 901-324-7490. Those are our numbers to call us here on Sidelines. We'll be with you from now until 5 o'clock Central Time. Of course, people listening in on the TuneIn Radio app, Spotify, and radio, everything else out there, thanks to our webmaster, the Nige. So anyway, Mitch Davis.
Gordon and
Yeah, Mitch Davis is going to be joining us here in a minute. But first, let's bring in the man, Gordo, the magnificent. Gordon, welcome to Sidelines. Another Friday, another big weekend. Man, but I'll say this, football season's going by way too fast.
Kind of is, isn't it? I mean, today is tomorrow is the game of the century, and then you have a lot of other SEC teams playing non-people who they should be able to beat. And other than that, it should be a great weekend. That's all I got to say. And plus, you got Minnesota playing Penn State. It should be a great national game, and some other good games going on too.
Your man PJ Fleck got him a nice new contract when he was mentioned as the possibility to take one of those openings, maybe the Florida State job, or you take your pick. But you've been spot on in identifying him as one of the up-and-coming stars in coaching.
Who did you say was going to take that job? I know Stoops has been in there, and I heard the other Stoops is going on that trying to get involved as well. But they said the only job he'll take would be Notre Dame.
Well, Bob Stoops at Oklahoma, he went to the national championship game 4 times. He won.
He's also coaching the XFL. I didn't know if he do that or not.
Yeah, he was 1-3 in the big game, but he got there 4 times, and he helped Florida change the culture, win a national championship back in '96. So he gets linked to every job. And what I wonder is Mike Leach's name going to be mentioned with Florida State?
Could be, but I think they're going from the guy from Wake Forest, and now they're probably looking at the other Stoops, the one at Kentucky. And
Mark Stoops at Kentucky.
Yeah. He's defensive coordinator at Jimbo Fisher when they won the national championship.
Yeah, Jimbo, look, he's locked in. He's the $75 million man over at Texas A&M, and he'll be 8-5 this year. After 2 years, 9-4 this year, probably be 8-5. I don't know what the deal is with Texas A&M. They got a lot of money, got great facilities, but they got to learn. They're a long way away. I don't care how tough your schedule is. You got to get some wins eventually against some of the top programs in the country. They haven't done it yet.
No, they don't. I mean, it's going to be an interesting year, man. I'm telling you, at the end here. I mean, you can see who's going to go, who's going to stay. whole lot of things. Wondered if Mitch is on there. I know he's been trying to get through. He's been
Yeah, we've got Mitch on the line with us. Mitch Davis, the Rivals.com sports reporter for the University of Memphis Tigers. And Mitch, great job last weekend. And come on aboard with Gordon and me and tell us about that game. But, hey, don't forget, got to play Houston tomorrow, and that's the most important one.
I tell you what, it is a great time to be a Memphis Tiger. I like the Tigers. Their story is what it's all about. I was actually on the way to Nashville for FNCS and Battleground Academy. I was actually at a restaurant in Jackson, and we stopped by a couple older gentlemen, saw my Memphis hat. They were like, "Hey, go Tigers! Great for the city of Memphis. Happy for you guys." And all these great things. And I tell you, it's such a great time to be a kid from Memphis. I mean, I grew up watching the dark ages of Memphis football, and here we are, and we have made it. This is such an honor to be a kid from Memphis right now, and it's so awesome to be a Tiger fan.
ESPN and Game Day were here last weekend. I've been to 6 game days myself. That one was unlike any I'd ever seen before. Probably the most energetic crowd I have ever been around.
You know, and that's the thing. I heard the figures, and I know Robbie and I were talking on Saturday. I mean, it was upward of 20,000 there. I mean, it was, people were stretched from 6 to 7 blocks either direction. I mean, it was just incredible, man. It was a true celebration for the city of Memphis, and it was so awesome. And like I said earlier, I was truly honored to be a part of Memphis football history. I mean, you know, growing up in Memphis and growing up with the kids of D'Angelo Williams, Danny Wimprine, and Chris Stowe and the Tiger basketball. I mean, growing up around that and being on stage and being backstage and overlooking all the crowd, man, was truly breathtaking. I mean, it was just one of those moments that I will remember for the rest of my life.
Gordo, would you have ever dreamed that a weekend like what we saw last weekend in Memphis would ever happen in football?
No, I did not. Actually, was playing SMU at that, who's been down for a long time.
33 years since they'd last been ranked when they got ranked about a month ago. And Memphis did the most important part. They won the game, and that was the largest crowd of Memphis Tiger fans, not counting the other team's fans, I think in school history, wasn't it? It was certainly the loudest crowd. I mean, you could probably hear them in Jackson.
Oh, yeah, definitely was. And that's one of the things, you know, it's very good for their school because they got a lot of national exposure. Memphis is one of 3 athletic departments in the country that has averaged over 59,000, or had a game with 59,000 in football and over 15,000 in basketball. They're one of 3 only programs. The only 2 are Tennessee and Arkansas so far in the 2019-2020 academic course.
Well, that's impressive. It just goes to show you what's happening. And obviously Tiger basketball is getting underway this week. Gordon, how good can this team be?
Oh, outstanding. They can probably get to the Sweet 16 or maybe further. Actually, I'm going to see the Ole Miss Rebels tonight. That's something that I think is going to be a big possibility.
Well, I think everybody that is a Memphis fan, in the past, the athletic department, guys, it's been, we got our Tiger basketball fans, and then we've got the people that follow football. And I think a lot changed last weekend. You're either a Tiger fan or you're not. I mean, that means that you follow everything. Both of y'all, did you witness a change? Do you think a cultural change, a shift, a seismic shift in the way Memphis is viewed, not just here in the city, but that's the most important, but nationally?
I think we did. I think this is going. I think that weekend is actually going to be what we look back on, whether that's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and we say, hey, that was the turning point in Memphis, not only the Memphis athletic history, but also for the city of Memphis. I mean, you look back at our history. We are Rob, you and I talked about this. We are a grit and grind, hard-working city. We're going to look back on that moment and say, hey, you know what? That's the moment that catapulted Memphis into the future. That's the moment that we're all going to look back on and say, hey, you know what? That's what started all this. That's what started every single thing that is going to happen from here on out. Whether that's the Memphis Athletics, whether that's with the Grizzlies, whether that's with, you know, the city of Memphis, that catapulted Memphis into the future.
Definitely, I got to say this. Nationally, when ESPN comes to town, they just ramp up the energy level like I've never seen here before. but it's the fact that it's football. Tom Rinaldi did a great feature, and Gordon, if you saw it on Kenny Gainwell out of Yazoo City, Mississippi.
Oh yeah, very good.
And those kind of stories start to resonate with fans. Let's talk next, guys, about recruiting. I'm sure Memphis had a lot of recruits there at the game. How many kids around the country saw that game and are asking about, hey, how do I get in touch with Memphis? I want to be recruited by these guys. That does nothing but help.
I'm sure he's all up on that.
I'd love to know. It's got to be good.
And without getting into too much detail, because I know the NCAA kind of limits as to what I can say about recruiting, I do know for a fact that there were a lot of high-name, high-profile, 3- and big-name 4-star players that were at that game and enjoyed that. We actually have a feature right now that my boss did about the recruits. It's on TigerSportsReport.com. So if you want to read that, because we can't specifically say the players' names on air, but we can say, hey, go read the article. All those names are in that article, but it was truly amazing to start reading some of the social media and the tweets and the Snapchats and Instagram from these kids. And not only the kids that Memphis is recruiting, but the kids that are sending in questionnaires to Mike Norvell staff and saying, hey, can you look it up? We want to come to Memphis. We want to be a part of this.
Yeah. Gordon, I think you and I, looking at recruiting, we followed it a long time. You remember when Forrest Davis was really the guy out of Birmingham. Are you starting to see, both of y'all, a lot of Memphis out to the side of some of the better players in the Mid-South for football? I'm just talking about football right now.
Oh yeah, I think they're going to get involved with people.
I think because, especially with the downfall,
they've got a good program. But, it's just like somebody told me the other day, if you get a chance to go to an SEC school,
really resonate a little bit with all of these recruits regionally, and not only regionally, but nationally.
But they're getting the diamonds in the rough. That guy that borderlines 3 to 4 star, and that's a type guy they're getting in, and they're talent evaluators too. And that's one of the big things they've got going for them. They see players. Yep, they can help them.
Well, look at the Memphis talent right now here in the area. And Mitch, you're getting to see a lot of high school games. Of the top 5 players in Memphis, how many of them are considering going and playing football for Mike Norvell and the Memphis Tigers?
Out of the 5 that are, out of the 3 that are remaining, the 2 just committed to the University of Tennessee, I think all 3 are pretty legitimate going to, or looking at Memphis. I'm not going to say going to Memphis because a lot can change with 18-year-old kids. But again,
you're kidding about that. Are you serious? Hey, Gordon and I can identify with that.
Without naming any of the recruits' names, of course, all of that's on TigerSportsReport.com, and I think I've tweeted out a couple things. Without naming a couple of those names, and I know a lot of people listening will probably know who I'm talking about, there's about 3 guys that are big-time recruits left in the city of Memphis, and all 3 of those guys are looking at the University of Memphis as legitimate. And also, you've got guys that are like diamonds in the rough with the kids that I've been watching from afar, like Will Young at FACS, number 21. He's a senior, uncommitted senior, actually first year playing high school football. He leads the team with over 80 tackles. I mean, this kid is just all over the field. He plays both sides of the ball. He actually looks and kind of plays like a little Austin Hall, with a little bit more strength and a little bit more dirt to him. He could probably be the next Austin Hall at the University of Memphis.
Surprises out there. Houston comes in. Memphis plays on the road at Houston tomorrow. Those games with Houston for the last few years have been really epic battles back and forth. Memphis coming from way behind, winning the game. Last year was another great comeback by Memphis here at the Liberty Bowl. The focus, what's the mindset of the Memphis football team right now? Because lots of people have been giving them a lot of love and pats on the back, and it's been probably a tough week for the coaches to get them to focus on Houston. What are you seeing out of the team as they get ready for tomorrow's game?
Well, I think the biggest thing is having the bye week this week. They have a bye week this week and heading into Houston next week. I think the biggest thing is just focus. Just saying, hey, this is Memphis football. Hey, we're going to go down here and show the world, hey, we're still not respected yet because they're still falling behind Cincinnati. I think they go down to Houston and use that extra week of practice to really get a hold of Houston, because this is not a good Houston team. Coach Dana Holmstrom has completely lost control of his team. You see that with transfers coming in and out. You see the bombshell tweets from the offensive linemen saying how Dana, abuses the players and this and that. So I think Memphis is going to use that to their advantage. I'm not really worried about next Saturday. The game that I'm really worried about is in 3 weeks on Black Friday when Cincinnati Bearcats come to town to the Liberty Bowl.
Gordon, Mitch, what are the possibilities, the chances, before we go, last question, Memphis gets to the Cotton Bowl or one of the Big Six if they finish 11-1 or 12-1 and win their conference?
Very good chance.
I think it's. I'll let Gordon answer that one first, and I'll give my take on that.
Gordon, what do you think?
I think they can get in. Yeah, I think they can get the major bowl if they finish that. But you also got to look. I mean, you got a good Cincinnati team too that it's going to be tough to beat. And I think the championship, correct me if I'm wrong, is played at who has the best records field. Am I correct?
It is correct.
So if I was Memphis, I'd be striving to get there because Cincinnati's going to have the same record. So it's going to be hard to say where they're going to play.
All right.
I think it does come down to the Black Friday game against Cincinnati. And of course, it's going to come down to the rematch as well. If you're Memphis, you have to win that Black Friday game, get that game at 34, and literally pack that stadium full like you did against SMU, and just have a crazy environment because it's going to be a home game. I do feel like this is a team that Memphis gets to the Cotton Bowl with. With game day coming to town and everything happening, it really feels like this is a team of destiny. This is a team that we have only dreamed of in the 901, and I'm just so proud of Mike Norvell and the coaching staff. And no matter what happens the rest of the season, Memphis fans need to hang their hats and their heads high with this football program.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And get back on with us. Great report, Mitch, as always. And you're different. You're young. You hadn't been contaminated by the toxic losing and the R.C. Johnson and all that over the years. You're an optimist. You're finding excuses to win. And Gordon and I got to tell you, Gordon, you ought to get the Pulitzer for finding this guy. He's a great reporter for University of Memphis.
You just said me at the press table in Ole Miss game.
He's one of my
we got to talk it. So.
Yeah.
I appreciate
the rest
you guys.
is history.
I appreciate the kind words.
All right, you bet. And thank you so much. Hey, we're going to take a commercial break here on Sidelines. Thank our sponsors. We'll be back with more. Check us out. Watch us on the live streaming, sidelines.live.
Had to hit the immigrant song again. Is it playing?
We'll get along. Okay. Is Gordon on the air?
If Grandma runs over Santa's reindeer, don't leave that deer alone there in the street. Load him up and take him down to Dino's, where they can process him into some real fine meat.
They were talking over and I kept saying, stop talking over.
It's easy to say that it's too hard to keep up. Even more difficult is trying to set everything up by yourself. Instead of going through the hassle and frustration, let Gaddis Home Innovation be your easy solution experience in installing your home electronics. Our main goal is to simplify home systems to where the not-so-tech-savvy person can operate it with ease, like most of them. We're a strong believer in that home technology has a huge impact on how your home is run. It can make family movie night more exciting. The Gaddis Home Innovation installing a large screen television with surround sound will really step up the movie viewing experience. We also specialize in installing security cameras and outdoor lighting to protect you and your family while you're in the house or while you're away. The beach, lake house, or in the duck line. Gaddis Home Innovation will have your back. Check them out on the website. Gaddis.com. Enjoyed Gaddis for 36 years, but it's announced recently there's nobody better at installing home electronics.
Kitchens Unlimited is celebrating 50 years in the business of building kitchens and baths. They are located at 3550 Summer Avenue near the intersection of Summer and Highland. Joe and Karen Casson, a friend of mine, I've known them 27 years. They're open weekdays, Monday through Friday from 10 to 5, not open on the weekend. Check out their website, kitchensunlimited.net.
You know, Rob, I'm looking at their website. I've been in Kitchens Unlimited before. They have great inventory. It's a great way that they take you through the process of talking to you about what you want to do and what your budget is. You feel like it's a very personal process all along the way. And as anyone knows, bathrooms and kitchens, they sell homes, they make homes. So it's a great store.
You're right. I don't think I could have said it any better. Women know more about what makes the kitchen work, what makes the bathroom work. These people are the best. They work with architects and builders and developers throughout the Mid-South. Go to Kitchens Unlimited, 3550 Summer Avenue near the intersection of Summer and Highland. They've been in the business now 50 years. Check out their website, kitchensunlimited.net. They are a member of the sidelines11 team. Check them out on our website, kitchensunlimited.net.
Okay, but it just sounds bad. All right, Rob Brown back here on the sidelines with you. We're going to be joined here in just a couple of minutes by Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols, and talk about Tennessee's big game on the road tomorrow night. Snakeskin, this is a must-win for Tennessee. Now they all are at this point, but they need to get to a bowl. Yes. 6:30 tomorrow night on ESPN, and I'm feeling good right now, thinking that Jeremy Pruitt, his toughness is starting to come through on the players. And last week, UAB, I think a lot of people thought that they'd have a chance to beat Tennessee. I just think Tennessee's starting to fundamentally come together. They played 3 quarterbacks, Ben Maurer, Schroed, obviously Gerentano, and they're starting to become a real team. And those freshman offensive linemen, like Wayne Morris, are starting to mature. I don't think they're freshmen anymore. This is the 9th game of the season.
Exactly, and I mean, they're gelling at the right moment. You know, yeah, this is the so-called weakest part of their schedule, but you can see them growing each week, and that's a positive. You know, everybody, all those naysayers in the beginning of the year, they were talking about this and that. Jeremy Pruitt needs to go, this and that. No, Jeremy Pruitt, I believe, is one of the best coaches in the SEC because he's hard-nosed. He goes out there, he gets the job done. With what he had, I believe he's worked a miracle. Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes still. Red zone, we have red zone problems, but hey, you know what? A young team like that, you're going to have that. I mean, for God's sakes, we got a quarterback out there playing with a broke hand.
Yeah, and I think that every game you play in the SEC, and college football, especially the SEC, is going to be a violent, physical experience. Kentucky started off the season okay, lost their quarterback. They have struggled this year. They won 10 games last year. That might be the best you're ever going to do at Kentucky. It rarely happens. They played in a New Year's Day Bowl and beat Penn State. This might be the time where Mark Stoops is, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Florida State where I was a defensive coordinator before I came here. Again, it'll be a lot of fun to watch, but most importantly for Tennessee is they've got to go on the road and take care of business. I think in 1984, Kentucky beat Tennessee. They didn't beat them again until 2011, and again 2 years ago in 2017. Now, last year, Kentucky was ranked number 12 in the country, and Tennessee won 24-7 up in Knoxville on a very cold fall day. But, man, the Tennessee fans got a glimpse of what they're capable of. Then a few weeks later, they went out and got drilled by Vanderbilt for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. I don't think people really saw that happening, but we're going to have Bob Kessling, the voice of the Vols, on here with us in just a few minutes, and looking forward to having him give his insight into what he thinks is going on at Tennessee. But there's so much football to be played. We've got a lot of games this weekend, as always. LSU and Alabama. Vanderbilt's going to be at Florida. Western Kentucky at Arkansas, Missouri at Georgia, and the Tennessee at Kentucky. The games right now, a lot of teams are playing strictly for, hey, we want to go to a bowl because we get the extra 20 days of practice. Looking at Tennessee's development, I think they're one of the toughest, most hard-nosed teams in their division. I'd like to see them in late November get a rematch. You can't do it, but I'd like to see it play against Georgia State, play against Brigham Young. Tennessee was disorganized at the beginning of the year. I don't think they knew what they were capable of doing, but they're just a much better team right now. And you look around at the playoff rankings came out this past Tuesday night. It doesn't really matter. Ohio State's number 1. That's kind of a surprise. They're a really good football team. But again, there's a lot of football to be played. LSU's at number 2. Number 3, Alabama. Number 4, Penn State. 2 Big Ten, 2 SEC. But LSU and Alabama are going to knock each other out. But I definitely think that the loser of LSU-Alabama is still alive and in the hunt for the college football playoff. And I think what we have to be careful of is not allowing the college football playoff to ruin everybody's season. There are 130 Division I football programs in America. Only 4 of them are going to make the playoffs. I hope the other 126 don't just say, well, this season's been a waste, been a disaster, doomsday if their team doesn't make the playoffs. Because bottom line, we all know this. College football is played by 19, 21, 22-year-old kids. You can choose to be a prisoner of the moment and think because your team played this bad or they played this well on a Saturday, by the next Saturday there's a whole another set of circumstances that will play into how they play, whether it's good or whether it's poorly. It's college football. You're playing and you're riding the brand. It's that name on the side of the helmet, not the name on the back of the jersey. How'd you like to be on a football team? And I know he's a hell of a football player with Antonio Brown, the wide receiver. Hey, he doesn't care about anybody but himself. He doesn't care about his team. Nor does that guy out there, the quarterback at Houston, who quit earlier this season, said, I'll be back next year. I wouldn't let him back on my team. I would resign if I was Dana Holgorsen, the coach at Houston, before I would allow that kid back on my football team. There's no way, Shane, that you can allow that to happen because, he's just a guy, bottom line, that he's not going to help Houston, and he probably thinks that they're going to be, I guess, welcoming him with open arms. That's not going to happen. He may go to Oklahoma. Several quarterbacks. Hey, Baker Mayfield transferred from Texas Tech, won the Heisman. Okay. Last year, Kyler Murray, he couldn't get the starting job at Texas A&M. His dad was a legacy player there. His dad played in the mid-'80s. All right? But transfers to Oklahoma, becomes the number 1 pick in the draft. 2 years in a row, he won the Heisman Trophy like the guy before him, Baker Mayfield. You're already seeing Baker Mayfield fizzling out in the NFL. The Cleveland Browns are on fire. They're terrible. Freddie Kitchens is the coach. They've lost 4 games in a row. Got a lot of problems on that team. And I don't know how they're going to get things better up there in Cleveland. But both of those quarterbacks, Kyler Murray. What's Kyler Murray doing as a rookie with the Arizona Cardinals? He was the number 1 pick in the draft. But again, watch how a kid plays against Alabama or Auburn or Georgia, LSU, Florida. Top-tier teams with elite front 7 talent on defense. Again, at the end of the first quarter in the college football playoff last year, Alabama led Oklahoma 21-0, and Oklahoma had 0 yards of offense. Alabama had 194 yards of total offense. All right? That's where you find out if a kid can play in the NFL because most every one of the starters on Alabama's football team, offense and defense, will be drafted. Certainly they'll all get a free agent opportunity. If you don't show up against Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, those schools, good luck in the NFL because you can't run wide very often if you're a running back. You've got to be able to run between the tackles. And I think it just makes for really a lot of interesting conversation, but I'm just not sold on Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley, they put a lot of points up and all like that, but they're just that's not Oklahoma. If they play one game against an SEC program, yeah, they're going to do well. But what you typically don't see them do is have to play Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Auburn, those kind of teams week in and week out. Nobody in the country has to do that. Hell, Auburn's got to play 4 teams in the top 10, or 5, counting Oregon. They beat them. They still got Georgia and Alabama. A lot of football to be played. But anyway, there's so much to debate. But as we get into it, it's November. It's cold. And like everybody will tell you, a lot of weird things happen in November. And, like I say, Tennessee's going up to Kentucky. And in the last, 35 years, Tennessee has only lost to Kentucky 3 times. I look for the Vols to go up there and come away with the win. Won't be easy. Tennessee, though, a team on a mission with a damn good football coach, Jeremy Pruitt. And we're joined now by, we're waiting for Bob Kessling to call in from the Tennessee Vol Network. But tomorrow at 2:30, Alabama and LSU. They're going to play each other. Number 2, LSU. Number 3, Alabama. I'll tell you right now, both teams, they cancel each other out. LSU has great receivers. Alabama has great receivers. Alabama hadn't really run the ball that much, but they can. they haven't really imposed their will on too many teams this year. Najee Harris is a really good running back. But their receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs III, you look at these guys. You also look at Devontae Smith. They are outstanding receivers. They've got incredible speed. Who's going to have the best pass rush? I think Alabama's pass rush has a chance to decide this game. Alabama's front seven, they're good. They've had some injuries, but a lot of people have been waiting for Alabama to show up. They've been told all year long they haven't played anybody. Now, LSU, the win on the road at Texas was a shootout. Texas isn't very good. This is going to be the 10th year in a row where the Longhorns have lost 4 games or more in a single season. All right? You got more money. You got the largest endowment of all the football schools, over $14 billion at Texas. I mean, somebody explain to me why Texas doesn't get the job done. And I'll tell you, I just don't really. I think a lot of schools have great facilities. They have a lot of money. Texas is supposed to be the best state for high school football in America. And Tommy Tuberville said on the show a couple of weeks ago, a lot of the kids, they're burned out almost when they get to college because it's a year-round sport. A lot of the kids, that's all they do. I think we have to be very careful. If you're Texas, you can't just have any coach out there. You've got to have an elite coach, and there are not many of those out there. I don't know what Urban Meyer would do at Texas. I don't think the culture at Texas now is good for winning championships in college football. You think it is with the money and the recruiting base, but they don't have what they have at LSU and Bama and Georgia, Auburn, Florida. Tennessee had it. They're trying to get it back. But I'll tell you right now, tomorrow, Alabama, LSU, you're going to see some of the absolute best talent in America on one field. Alabama hasn't lost at home since September of 2015 when they lost to Ole Miss for the second straight year. Hugh Freeze gave Nick Saban fits for those 2 years. Well, let's fast forward. Hugh Freeze is gone at Ole Miss. He's coaching up at Liberty. Earlier this season, he had a back injury, back problem, and he was coaching out of a lazy boy, I think. But what a great offensive mind Hugh Freeze is. So, there's coaches, when you get hot, you better enjoy it. You better appreciate what you've got because it doesn't always last forever. You're lucky when you're winning. You got to be grateful. Okay. All right. 901-452-3094. 901-324-7490. And I tell you right now, looking around at college football where we are,
John Julian.
Everybody is talking. We're going to get to you in just a second, John. Everybody's talking about the playoff rankings. Forget about it. Okay? What matters is the 4 teams that are there as we go into the bowls. But anyway, let's go to Julius. Wants to talk a little college football, big games this weekend. What are you thinking about Alabama and LSU? Alabama's a 6.5 point favorite right now down in Tuscaloosa, and the president, Donald Trump, is going to be there.
Bobby Lee, thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Doing good. Hey, look, talking college football. What can be wrong with that?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think Tennessee's going to be $1.08 and $1 short, kind of like Bob Kessling right now.
Yeah.
So I really think Kentucky's going to put it to Tennessee, but that's only because Bob Kessling's a little bit late calling into this.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know I told 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern time, but I'll tell you, I love listening to Bob Kessling, the voice of the Vols, and John Ward, Bill Anderson, the Vol Network. I love listening to games on the radio. You've got to learn to sync your TV, but you can do that now to where the radio broadcast is in time with what's on TV. Julius, let's break down some of the big games this weekend. We're going to go ahead and start with Florida and Vanderbilt. Now, Florida ought to win this game. But if you looked at the record and the way Florida plays the week after the Georgia game down in Jacksonville, they seem to struggle. Now, they lost that game. They're 7-2 right now. Now they got to reassess their goals. But they ought to win big. But I think Florida, Dan Mullen, is probably the best quarterback coach in college football.
I agree with you. I don't think quarterback coach is as important as most people think. In his case, I would agree that he does something that most people don't do, and he does know how to coach his quarterbacks. But you know what? I think Vanderbilt's going to go in there. They're playing well now, and like you said, Florida's a little bit down right now, and Vanderbilt's gone in there a few times here recently and given them a run for money. And in fact, I think they beat them sometime within the last 3 or 4 years. Obviously, Florida was down. But I see Vanderbilt going in there and kind of keeping it close, 10 points or so.
That'll be wild. I think Florida, what I've seen out of the Gators, their defense, they're starting to get the athletes in the state. With the situation at Miami, Manny Diaz is regarded as a really good recruiter. But when Florida's rolling, it's hard for Miami. I think it is. But let's go back in the mid-'80s when Florida was on probation. Charlie Pell had to step down. Galen Hall, who was a double as Wilfred Brimley in the firm, coached them for a while, and Gary Darnell took over. Florida State began to get great players from over in Central Florida that Florida used to basically feel entitled to get. Sammy Smith out of Apopka is one that comes to mind, one of the better players. Florida State, from 87 to 2000, 14 straight years, Julius, never finished outside of the top 4 final rankings. Florida State is a mess right now. If they get this next hire wrong, Julius, they could take many, many steps back. I'm talking a decade back. The ACC is a one-trick pony right now with Clemson. Mac Brown's making a little noise at North Carolina. North Carolina really never has sustained success. Florida right now is getting who they want in the state. And I think Florida's the best high school football in America.
Michael Tapp is on hold.
Texas is really taking a step back, and it has.
How did that happen? And how did that happen?
I know how, Bobby, and it's kind of the same thing that's happened to California. And I know this is a horrible analogy, and I am not at all trying to offend anybody. And what I'm going to say should not offend people. But, I was talking to a guy from California who's big into football out there, and he brought it up to me, and I said, well, I've been saying that. This kind of goes with Texas. But, athletes are, there's certain cultures that excel in sports. And sometimes if you, and this is a horrible analogy, and I'm going to catch some heck for it, but it's almost like breeding dogs. And if people are getting married and, certain cultures, maybe the Spanish culture or the Puerto Rican culture or whatever, it's been a process, but it's happened. And I saw this coming probably 20 years ago. Same thing's kind of Texas. I'm not so much sure it's as bad as California, but you know what? It's a combination of things. People aren't letting their kids play football.
Hey, John, look here in Memphis, St. Louis Middle School. Okay. 7th and 8th grade football team had 7 kids from St. Louis come out to play football this year that Johnny coaches. Normally, in past years, when my kids were going through there, it was 35 to 40 kids.
Why? What are they doing now, if I'm not mistaken? They going to Holy Rosary and doing one team? Johnny?
Yeah, they've had to combine multiple teams. And hey, John, we've got a caller that we've got to take here right now. But listen, we're going to talk about this a lot more, because numbers in Alabama high school football this year are up from 31 and change to over 32,000. So they're increasing. It's just certain pockets where the kids have other things to do. But we're definitely getting back on that.
Let me say something real quick.
Yeah.
LSU's quarterback is going to have an eye-opening this weekend.
Yeah, it's I tell you what.
They're licking their chops at Alabama for that freshman quarterback. I'm just telling you right now. I am not an Alabama fan, but I will shoot straight.
Well, Joe Burrow's a senior. You're talking about. You're talking about LSU licking their chops for Mac Jones.
Correct.
Well,
my bad.
Yeah, we're going to see. The doctors have hopefully got Tua, if you're an Alabama fan, that is, ready to play. But yeah, we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But hey, Julius.
What about Keesland? I got you.
Hey, keep listening, and you're on to something about California and Texas. That's something we're going to dig into, okay? All right. Sidelines 901-452-3094, 901-324-7490. All right, we're going to be joined now by Michael Pappas from the Auburn Network studios down on the Plains. And Michael, you do a daily talk show down there in Auburn. The Lunchbox from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central. I love the show. I'm a frequent caller myself, and I love. And you also do after the game from Sky Bar there in Auburn with Dan Peck, the Orson Welles of the radio man. I love the two of y'all on the radio because used to be, Michael, when I was growing up, they would get a couple of assistant coaches on the post-game radio show, win or lose, and they'd have to take calls from fans, some of whom had been locked up drinking 30 or 40 beers and were mad because their team lost, and they've probably never been to a game, and you know where I'm going with that.
And hey, Rob, unless you went to the wrong person, you're talking to Jerome now.
Oh, okay. Hey, Jerome? Okay.
Yeah, wrong person, my man. Do I need to hold on?
No. Let's do this. Let's go to Michael Pappas real quick, and then we'll come back to you, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Well, hey, Mike, Jerome, hang on because we want to talk with you about Alabama and LSU.
Hello?
Hey, Michael. Hey, I was giving you a little bit of an introduction because we're going to have Jerome from the Tidal Wave in Birmingham on in just a minute talking about the LSU-Alabama game. But, you do a daily talk show down there in Auburn, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the Auburn Network, on ESPNAU.com, 106.7. I love it. I'm a frequent caller, listen to it every day, got friends all over the country that listen. You do a post-game radio show from Sky Bar there in Auburn with Dan Peck. You are hearing from Auburn fans, local, regionally, nationally. People follow it, listen on the web. You hear a lot. In your opinion, Auburn right now, they've lost 2 games to top 10 teams. Is the Auburn fan base happy in your opinion? And what do they think Gus has to do to keep his job? Because in my opinion, if Auburn were to fire Gus, they could become another Tennessee and have a lost decade of football because Auburn, believe it or not, has a damn good football program.
Yeah, first of all, Rob, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. It seems like the general consensus is coming off, an explosive offensive performance against Ole Miss where the offense put up 500 yards.
Yeah.
But just couldn't find the end zone. People weren't really thrilled with that victory against Ole Miss. People were rather disappointed. I don't really agree with that. I thought that was one of the better games that the Auburn offense has played, and that's been, the major issue in those top 10 matchups. Like you said, there are 2 top 10 matchups left on the season. Auburn's going to host Georgia and host Alabama. And I think as long as Gus Malzahn and the Auburn Tigers don't get horrifically blown out in those games, I think Gus's job is safe. I mean, the buyout is just so massive, and if you look at the story of the season, he's got some great wins on the resume just from this year alone, and he's in prime position to make some real noise. Technically Auburn's not out of the playoff picture, although that is a rather big long shot. They can't even win the SEC at this point. But with, home wins over your 2 biggest rivals, both of whom are going to be in the top 10 coming in, that's massive. I would not be surprised if Auburn finishes the season as a top 10 team. And if that's the case, I think it's very hard for you to fire Gus Malzahn.
Yeah. Let's look at the 13 years that Nick Saban spent at Alabama. The SEC East has a total of 3 wins. Florida's 1-6 against Nick Saban. Georgia 1-5. South Carolina 1-2. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky have yet to beat a Saban coach team at Alabama. Tennessee has lost 13 in a row to Alabama. Hard to believe. In the 12 years prior to Nick Saban coming to Alabama, Tennessee was 10-2 against Alabama. Goes in cycles. Look over here in the West. Arkansas, 0-13 against Bama under Saban. A&M's won one time back in 2012, first year when Johnny Manziel went crazy. Ole Miss twice, Mississippi State once in Saban's first year. LSU 3 times, but the last win was November of 2011 in overtime in Tuscaloosa 9-6. And Auburn's beaten the Saban teams 4 times. A couple other close calls, but 14 total losses for Nick Saban. No Auburn coach in history, Michael, would you agree, has ever had to face Alabama with what Nick Saban's got, and it's incredible. And bottom line is, Gus Malzahn has yet to have a losing season in his first 7 years at Auburn.
Yeah, if you're just looking at the numbers like that, Gus Malzahn is definitely one of the better coaches Auburn has had historically even. A great comparison, just looking at numbers, is Tommy Tuberville.
Yeah.
And I know Tommy Tuberville's record against Alabama was much better than Gus Malzahn's is, but those Alabama teams were just absolutely brutal. I mean, they were not good football teams that Tommy Tuberville was having to go play. And, I mean, starting in a recruiting basis, having to recruit against the best coach and one of the best recruiters in NCAA football history is no easy task. And when you add to that what's going on in Georgia right now, and Florida seems to always be hanging around top 5, top 10 in recruiting, even when they weren't necessarily the best of football teams. I mean, we're looking at down years from Florida where they made the SEC championship game.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Gus has had more success than any other coach in the country, save Dabo Swinney, at beating Nick Saban. And to go away, to kind of circle back to the first question, to go away from a coach that's had that much success at Auburn and at beating Nick Saban, I don't think is a very smart decision right now. But, a huge part of it is the fan base just feeling disappointed. And if the offense fails to show up at home against Georgia, against Alabama, you could see a very, very angry Auburn fan base.
Michael, Tommy Tuberville's teams, they beat some good Alabama teams. I mean, the one in 2002, Alabama was undefeated, 10-0 with Franchione, and Auburn was given absolutely no chance when they went up there and won with a freshman running back playing out there, Trey Smith and Robert Johnson and Cooper Wallace, freshman at fullback. That Cadillac was out with a broken leg, Ronnie Brown with an injury. They won in 2005. Alabama was maybe had one loss, was top 5, and they came down to Jordan-Hare, and Auburn won that game. But you're right, year in and year out, nobody has had to face. Alabama is averaging, in the 13 years Nick Saban's been there, 12 wins a year. So, look, I think if as an Auburn fan, you have to say, look, we expect to win every game, and you better be putting every resource that you got into doing that. Right now in recruiting, Auburn's, number 7, number 8 in the country. Of course, there's Alabama ahead of Auburn. There's Georgia, LSU, Texas A&M. You can say that you've got the 5th or 6th best class in the SEC, but you're still going to be in the top 10 in the country. I mean, it's like saying you've got the oldest Rolls Royce at the Beverly Hills Country Club, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it certainly. And it's hard to say the deck is stacked against him because we know the kind of support that he's got from the Auburn fans and from the university. But up against some of the best recruiters in the country, like for every prospect, it's not like USC or University of Texas or even like Stanford or Notre Dame who can recruit nationally. And some of their guys that they're recruiting, they're the biggest school on these guys' radars. And for most of these guys that Auburn's going after, they're competing. They're in top 5 lists, top 8 lists with, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, all these schools that recruit really well. And now Texas A&M with Jimbo is recruiting at that high level also. And, that's going to end up in a situation like the one that Auburn is in, where it's hard to say you had a bad recruiting class when you're ending up number 8, but unfortunately number 8 in the country is number 5 or number 6 in the SEC right now.
That's right. And Michael, Auburn's got the week off tomorrow, the 16th. They'll be at home at Jordan-Hare Stadium against Georgia, where Gus Malzahn is 2-1 in his career against Georgia at Auburn. And 2 weeks later, they'll have Alabama come to town, where Gus is 2-1. Both of his victories over Alabama at Jordan-Hare are against number 1 ranked Alabama teams. I mean, look, I guess what I'm saying is, who in the country is going to end up at the end of the year having played 5 teams ranked in the top 10? You know, that's a whole book, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the only one that comes to mind might be South Carolina, maybe Texas A&M, but those 2 teams have certainly not had the kind of seasons that Auburn's had.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's tough because Auburn could be, like you said, Auburn could be the 10th best team in the country and just ran into 5 teams that are better.
Yeah, that's right.
4 teams that are better.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun to watch. Michael, I hope you will join us again. We've got to take a hard break. We've got another caller coming in here, but great insight. And anybody out there, listen to the Lunchbox, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., ESPNAU.com. Great show. These guys know their stuff. We'll be right back. Sidelines. 1 more hour to go.
Don't stop. The way you talk so tough. And there's a perfect kiss somewhere out in the dark, with a kiss of the moon. And the world don't stop. Every time that you cry.
We have Bart's interview on there? Okay.
Where did you get that photo here?
Cadoce.
Where are the best liquor deals?
Cadoce.
Where are you going, dear? I'm going to Cardosi.
Sorry, Shane.
If Grandma runs over Santa's reindeer, don't leave that deer alone there in the street. Load him up and take him down to Dino's, where they can process him into some real fine meat.
You know what my man cave needs?
What's that, Rob?
A giant screen TV with surround sound.
You should go to gaddishome.com.
That's right. They can do all of this without costing us a fortune. They can also put in the security cameras and outdoor lighting you've been wanting forever.
Well, what are you waiting for?
Hey, check them out at gaddishome.com or on our website, sidelines.live. That's Gaddis Home Innovation. Can you come on at 4:15? Is that okay? It's 4:03 now in about 12 minutes. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll call you right at 4:15. I'm sorry.
Your new kitchen looks fabulous. I couldn't have done it without the Kitchens Unlimited team. They captured my style and kept it within my budget. I just love the materials you used. Were you ever worried how it would look? No, not at all. My designer provided detailed drawings and made sure I understood everything. Their great service continues after the install. I got a custom kitchen with the exact style and details I wanted. Wow, it sounds like you're going to miss them. Not for long. They also do bathrooms. You can reach the Kitchens Unlimited team at 3550 Summer Avenue or on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
That's Shane.
I'm ready for the chance. I'm With your conscience, yes. With your heart now, sitting on a windowsill, and it's mighty safe. Check out this businessman. Keep up some high on the way to the stock exchange.
All right, we are right back here on Sidelines for the last hour. We'll be with you till 5 o'clock Central Time. Check us out at sidelines11. We're live streaming. Gordon is out on his way to Oxford, watch some basketball with the Ole Miss Rebels. And we got Jerome joining us from the Tidal Wave down in Birmingham. Man knows a thing or two about the Crimson Tide. And Jerome, there's a lot of excitement down there in Tuscaloosa and all of college football. Number 2 LSU is going into hostile territory to play Alabama. They haven't lost at home in over 4 years. You got the president, Donald Trump's going to be there. And ticket scalping is legal in Alabama, man. What could be better?
Hey, you know what, man? Only thing could be better to me is if the media would actually give Alabama a chance, man. You know, for the last couple of weeks, you know, all you hear is, you know, how Alabama gonna stop Burrows or how Alabama gonna hold up to this. You know, it's like it's over the last 8 years of this series, it's like it's no respect for the Tide. But, you know, I think that's gonna cost them tomorrow, you know, just that little disrespect there myself.
Well, I've been saying this for a while. If I'm an Alabama football player, I'm sick and tired of being told, hey, we haven't played anybody, we haven't beaten anybody, the defense isn't that good. This is just not your typical Alabama team. And Clemson beat us 44-18 for the national championship. And here we are, a team that's ranked number 2, 3, whatever rankings you look at, hadn't lost at home in over 4 years, and we're playing LSU tomorrow. Yet, yeah, we really aren't relevant. And our coach, Nick Saban, always has us, and our coaches always have us ready to play. I got a lot to prove. Now, if I'm LSU, I'm trying to get over that mental block, 8 straight losses to the Crimson Tide, and hoping that if things don't go well early, they're in sort of a, oh no, here we go again. So there's a lot of mental games being played right now, aren't there?
Well, you know what? I agree with you. I think right now with LSU, I think it's going to be a mental thing. You know, I think they finally know that they're capable of beating Alabama or capable of playing with Alabama this year. I just don't think maybe mentally they're going to get over the hump. I tell you what, it's going to be similar to Georgia. This is going to have to be the year they do it, because if this is not the year, you lose Burrows and you lose a lot of that talent. And LSU, you know, lately they reload the key missing part to LSU reload every year is that quarterback. You know, I think they looked out and got a pretty good quarterback in Burrows. But I tell you, man, I don't think it's going to be what the media and the experts think. I think with Tua back playing, even if he's 75 or 80%, I just don't think LSU defense is going to be able to hold up to all the firepower that Alabama has on the offensive side of the ball. I just think it's a little bit too much.
I think so many people around the country are looking at this game as Coach O's coronation to the LSU nation. He's arrived. Now, his record against top 10 teams is really good as long as they're not called the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is the test. And, you know, it ain't the doing in life that's so bad, it's the dreading. A wise man, Henry B., told me that years ago. And it's true, isn't it, Jerome?
Hey, I tell you, man, I heard you talking to the last interview. You was talking to the Auburn guy.
Yeah.
who don't dread playing Alabama, man? You know, they always say we don't play anybody, Alabama don't play anybody, but, you know, outside of Clemson and outside of maybe Auburn here and there, Ole Miss this one time, or A&M this one time, like you said earlier, Alabama, you know, don't let me forget Georgia. They get highly pitched, you know. Georgia almost did it a couple of times, but, you know, outside of a handful of football teams, Alabama just simply just been overbearing to everybody they've played pretty much, you know, the last 13 years.
Yeah,
it's just hard to beat a Coach Saban team. They prepare for games like this. They coached up. They mentally ready. They physically ready. You know, I think he's going to throw a little bit of different schemes, schematics against LSU tomorrow. And I just think LSU and Brian Dennis is going to get overwhelmed.
Well, look, Jerome, you live down in Birmingham. You have followed Alabama football for a long time. The talent level at Alabama is the same as it is every year. You had some key injuries to guys like Dylan Moses before the season started. I think they were counting on immediate help from running back Trey Sanders out of Tampa. He was rated, I guess, the number one running back in America, as Najee Harris was 2 or 3 years ago when he came out. So get in line, man. You know, playing time is a precious commodity at Tuscaloosa.
Well, you know what, man, the thing about it is you come down there and you compete. That's what makes the program so good. Everybody competing with each other. And then when you lose a player or a player get hurt, you know, it's not truly a drop-off. You may deal with a little inexperience here and there. But, you know, that's what separates Alabama, Clemson for the rest of the nation, you know. LSU finally getting there where they can develop. Georgia needs to get there. And like I said, I heard you talking with the Auburn guys, and to me, coming from me, I just think that's the difference with Auburn. You know, I think Gus is, I'm not going to say the best coach for Auburn. I just think he needs to find him an offensive coordinator, bring him in, and let them run that offense. You know, with him putting his hand in the bucket, it's causing a lot of issues, and his talent is not developing down there like he can. And, you know, that's what separates Alabama, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas A&M. You know, Coach Saban develops these guys. He have them ready. He don't worry about the ones. He had the 2s, 3s, and 4s ready. They're ready.
Yeah, in Alabama, everybody there is trained. It's like some elite, you know, military unit, next man up. That's how they live down in Tuscaloosa. But LSU's really good. If you compare the receivers to Alabama's, LSU's, you compare them, they kind of wash each other out, okay? Then you look at the running game. Well, Najee Harris is Alabama's best running back. Everybody remembers the great touchdown run he had against South Carolina earlier in the season. But the guy that I think is the best running back in the SEC when, you know, it's money time is Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of Baton Rouge. He's only about 5'7", but he showed up big when they needed him in the second half against Florida and against Auburn. He was just running. He can run between the tackles. He can run wide. What's Alabama got to do to slow down? Because this LSU offense is impressive. It's the best we've seen out of them probably ever. But think about this. Auburn, Kevin Steele, defensive coordinator, is a damn good one. He lines up in a 3-1-7 defense early on. Joe Burrow was confused. So they didn't take those long passes downfield, 40 and 50-yard attempts. They threw the short stuff 10 yards and under, and they ran 89 plays. Eventually, they just wore Auburn out. They won 23-20. How's Alabama going to – I'm sure they're taking some of that. Steele coached on 2 different occasions with Nick Saban, but what are they going to take from that gives them a real good chance to mess up LSU's offensive rhythm?
You know what? I think the keys to Alabama messing up LSU offensive rhythm is going to be –
got Joe, then Frank Duffy.
It's going to be Terrell Lewis, and it's going to be Jennings. I think Lewis has an opportunity to earn his way up into a lottery pick this weekend. I think Davis had that opportunity. And, you know, with Jennings on the other side, because one thing about it is LSU is going to have to double team 1 or 2 of those guys. If they double team Terrell Lewis, Jennings is wide open. If they double team Raheem Davis, Terrell Lewis and Jennings is wide open. I just think the speed that Alabama going to bring off the edge, you know, with LSU having a little trouble with their tackles, you know, with the quickness, is going to cause Burrows to kind of make some quicker decisions what he normally make, and, you know, going to pressure decisions, throw a few interceptions, get a few sacks. I just think, you know, Lewis is going to be the difference. I wouldn't be surprised if Lewis, Nigel Harris, and Jennings have big-time football games tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that Nick Saban, he will have something ready. Sarkisian, the offense will be ready. There's going to be so much talent. I think it's going to come down to turnovers are going to be big. Special teams will be big. The receivers on both teams, this is the greatest collection of wide receiver talent that we've seen on one field in the college football game in a long time, Jerome. Before we let you go, tell us this. Number one, what's your prediction on the score in the game tomorrow? 2:30 kickoff on CBS. And what do you think? I guess give me who you think is going to be the MVP of this game for both teams.
MVP for Alabama, I say it's probably going to be Terrell Lewis. I think he is the key. If he could get pressure on Burrows, cause a few interceptions, fumbles, sacks, I think he's going to be the money maker for Alabama. And then, even if Burrows and LSU lose the football game, I just still think Burrows is just a difference maker at quarterback. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's the MVP for LSU. I don't think their running game is going to be a big issue with Alabama. We're used to their running game. We know how to stop their running game. And and for the notion of them saying that their running game is better than Alabama, I just think that's going to motivate the defense of Alabama just a little bit more to stop them. And then I think also it's going to motivate the offensive line for Alabama to open up the holes for Nigel Harris. So it's going to be a good football game, and I think it's going to be a four-quarter game, but I just think Alabama's going to be a little bit too much. And I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being a 10, 14-point lead with Alabama getting the lead early in the game and maybe just taking it out of the ball, running the ball with Nigel Harris.
9-0-1. I tell you what, I think bottom line, Jerome, it's going to be a great game. I'm going to make my pick right before we go off the air. I don't want to be pinned, but thanks so much for calling. We're going to go to Bob Kessling now, the voice of the Vols, and get him on the air with us in just a minute, okay? Yes, 901-324-7490. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. All right, but it was interesting hearing Jerome, and he really knows a lot about Alabama football. Shane, Alabama, I really think is the hungriest I've seen them in a long time because they just feel disrespected and they've been pushed in a corner. They hadn't played anybody. That's all they're hearing. I counter that by saying they're so good, they just beat everybody so bad. It looks like they hadn't played anybody. But I'll tell you the team that gave Alabama the toughest time was Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean,
God, that frustrated me. That was an interesting game.
They exposed that young defense because actually Alabama don't have the depth that they've been having in past years on defense.
Yeah, I guess you're talking about the superstars. When Dylan Moses went down, he's from Baton Rouge, the linebacker. I think that gives the perception that that's what happened. But man, there's just so much good football in the South, so much talent, and this is going to be like just an epic film, that's going to be played out. It's going to make a great movie. It's going to be played out in front of the country. But I mean, it's just what a game. And like I said, I think I'm leaning toward Alabama in this one. But hey, we're joined now by Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols, and thank you so much for joining us and being on here with us. And I'm sure you're busy. Y'all are heading up to Lexington to play Kentucky. And what's the mindset of Tennessee going into this game? Because 2 more wins, they get into a bowl game, and they get that extra 20 days of practice. That's got to be big.
Well, that is big, but I think Coach Pruitt has stressed this week, you better think about Kentucky and concentrate on that. This is a pretty confident Tennessee team. They're playing with a lot more emotion. They're playing with a lot more confidence. Anytime you win, that kind of helps the level of your confidence and that makes you practice harder and all those type of things. So I think they're finally seeing the fruits of their labors coming to the forefront, and they're playing better. They're playing faster. They're playing with more efficiently. So I think they're ready to go up to Kentucky. Now, Kentucky's had 2 weeks to get ready. Kentucky, they've got a lot of the same goals that Tennessee has, and those are all in front of Kentucky as well. So it should be a motivated Kentucky team, and I'm sure they still remember last year what Tennessee did down at Neyland Stadium to them. So I think it's going to be a very interesting and entertaining game.
And I do too. Tennessee, in the last, since Phil Fulmer was out at the end of 08, this is the 11th year. And you just wonder, how could Tennessee, a program that is the 9th or 10th winningest program in the history of college football, go through tough times like this? But hey, when Coach Bryant retired at Alabama at the end of the 82 season, all the way up to 2007, the first year of Nick Saban, in those 25 years, Alabama only won 3 SEC championships. And I say only, but by Alabama standards, that's a long time, over 25 years. And now look what they're doing. So it happens, doesn't it? Cycles.
Well, sure. I think you look at any SEC program or any college football team, it'll tell you that it does go in cycles. Doug Dickey once said in a speech I heard him, he said one thing that you have in college football, tradition and pride never graduates. So if you have tradition, even though when you take a little dip, you always bounce back. The good programs do. And I think that's played out throughout the course of college football history. Every school has had some dips, and then the good ones bounce back, and the other ones kind of spin their wheels for a long time. So Tennessee's hoping that they get some traction here and get it going forward. Every time you change coaches, though, you lose some of that traction. And I don't care what they say, it does knock your program back a couple of years every time you change coaches. And then Tennessee went through that flurry of changing them, over the past several seasons. And, it finally caught up to Tennessee. So now you're hoping to get some stability with Jeremy Pruitt. He knows how to build a program, knows what good teams look like, knows how to recruit. You hope all those things will pay off, and Tennessee maybe has turned the corner a little bit.
Yeah, without pointing the finger at the previous staff and players, what's the biggest difference? There's probably several things between Butch Jones' teams and what you're seeing out of Jeremy Pruitt's that you come to mind and really stand out to you.
Well, I think everybody's kind of looking back. It's kind of revisionist history a little bit, thinking that Butch Jones's, teams are all terrible. I mean, he had a lot of good players.
Yeah.
And, Jeremy Pruitt's inherited a bunch of good players from Butch Jones when he was recruiting. It just kind of got off the tracks there at the end, and that happens sometimes. And I think everybody thought, after the first couple of years of Coach Jones that, maybe this is the guy to get it going. But it just tells you how hard it is to sustain things and keep it going. So you've got to be patient, and you've got to be patient with Coach Pruitt and hope that he pushes the right buttons and keeps this thing going. It's all about players. It's all about developing players and getting those players to perform for you. And I think at the end of the last couple of years of Coach Jones, I just don't think they had enough depth. Don't think they had enough really good players to go up there and win some of the big games. I mean, they won some big games. They just didn't win enough of them. And so I think that now Coach Pruitt's trying to restock the roster and trying to, he knows what he wants in terms of linebackers. He knows what they look. They look like Henry To'o. He knows what he wants in defensive linemen, and you can go down the list and look at some of the guys. Daryl Middleton. That's kind of what he's looking at defensive linemen, safeties and cornerbacks. He has a specific size and speed and all those kind of things he's looking at. So he's finally plugging some of those guys in that fits his mold and his style, and he got that from Coach Saban, I think. And they all, when you go down and look at Alabama's teams or even Ohio State's teams, Michigan's teams, their tight ends all look exactly alike. Their linebackers all look exactly alike. Their offensive linemen all look. There's a specific mold and a fit that all these coaches are looking for, and that's what Jeremy Pruitt's looking for at Tennessee. And he's starting to get some guys in those spots and I think that's why they're starting to play better.
Bob, you've been around Tennessee football, athletics for most of your life. I mean, you've grown up with it. What do you tell the Tennessee fans out there that have become frustrated? And I don't think they're alone. All fan bases, when they're comparing to themselves to what's going on in Alabama, and they say, "Well, we're done. We're not good, and we're never going to be able to compete." What do you say to people like that? Because I think they're crazy to say it, but it's what you hear a lot, and I think social media, it's coming at you 24/7.
Well, I think the way the fan bases are, and that's not just in Tennessee or any place else, if you're not winning championships, if you're not winning the East and the SEC, and if you're not playing for the SEC championship, and if you're not in the college football playoffs, your season's kind of a disappointment.
Yeah.
And which is a shame. I mean, it used to be if you could get 8 or 9 wins and go beat Michigan or Ohio State in a bowl game, that was a really good year for Tennessee. And now it's almost like you got to go to the SEC championship game, or your season's not very successful. And a lot of it has to do with TV, and a lot of all these talk shows and the football playoff shows and all those kind of things. I mean, there are Clemson fans right now are madder than the Hornets, thinking that, well, we're being disrespected because, we're 5th in the college football playoffs.
Yeah. Well,
you've still got a whole month of football left to play, and there's going to be a lot of things change. I mean, Ohio State, Penn State are going to play, and LSU and Alabama is going to play, and Alabama or LSU is probably going to play Georgia. SEC championship game. There's a lot of things that Penn State and Ohio State play here in a little bit. So, I mean, there's so many things that can change, but, I mean, the fans right now are so reactionary to what's going on in the moment instead of looking down the road a little bit. But that's why there are 80 or 90,000 fans at all these college football games, because there is such passion. So, we don't need to, be too critical of the fans, but it puts a lot of pressure on players and coaches because, now 9 and 3 seasons, it's almost like it's not a success anymore. It's a disappointment, and that's really too bad.
Yeah, I agree. And Philip Marshall is a writer for Auburn Undercover website. He remarked in one of his columns this past week about watching a game where Purdue had won, and the celebration with the players and the fans was just electric. And he said, you just don't see that at a lot of the big schools now. If they're not winning the championship, they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. So it's awful. But before we let you go, just what do you say to the fans? I'm a huge fan of Jeremy Pruitt as a coach. I think he's tough as nails. But they say, well, he's just too tough. The players don't like him. Well, I don't seem to recall. Does that matter? He gets results done. I think that's nonsense. I think his kids love him because they believe in him. And they see what he's getting them into. And I think Tennessee fans are about to see some great seasons in the coming years, because this is one of the toughest football coaches around. He's what Tennessee needs to restore that great culture of the Big Orange Nation.
Well, I mean, he learned under his dad. He's learned under Nick Saban, and he's learned under some really good coaches. And those guys were all, coach them hard and to be tough on them, and don't accept mistakes and excuses, and it's results-driven business, and I think that's the way Jeremy is. He coaches them hard now.
Yeah,
he is on them. But I think when suddenly you see all the pieces coming together, and this last game have 4 turnovers. Well, all that preaching about forcing turnovers and playing positions and doing your job and all that kind of stuff, when you start seeing results, that makes it a lot better. And, the players that have bought in, they all, I think, really love playing for Jeremy Pruitt. And I think all the guys that he's coached before, when he was at Alabama and Florida State and all Georgia and these places, all the players that he coached, just sing his praises about that he made them better as football players. And I think that's one of the big reasons he got this job, is that his ability to develop and evaluate and recruit and develop players is a strength. And there's not many coaches out there that have that ability to do that and bring these guys along a little bit. So, Jeremy Pruitt goes down the list of all these players right now that aren't playing very much on the Tennessee roster. But he says in 2 years they're going to be really good players.
Yeah.
And so it's not like he's getting these freshmen, and if they're not doing what they're helping right now, he doesn't give up on them. Yeah. But he goes ahead and says, you got to develop them, and in 2 years this guy's going to be really, really good. So I just think that's the way he's wired, and he's not a lot of fluff. He's not a guy. He's got a good sense of humor. You don't see it as much as maybe you'd like to see it, but he's got a good sense of humor, and but he's so focused on football and his family. I mean, those are the two things that's the only I've ever heard him talk about: football and his family, and going to Gus's Deli down on the strip after games. That's about the only thing. He went to Gus's Deli at 4 a.m. after the Tennessee Alabama game to get a sandwich, so he could go back and watch film. So that tells you a little bit about how that guy's wired. So
yeah.
I think that the Tennessee fans are just a little bit. I mean, I think right now the Tennessee fans are really encouraged this season. The way it started, I mean, I think most Tennessee fans thought this team would be lucky to win 4 games.
Yeah.
And they're at 4 right now, and so they got a chance to win more games. But I mean, this looked like the Titanic. I mean, this was going south in a hurry, and Howie's kind of settled things down and won the games that he was supposed to win. And I think the Mississippi State game was really big to win that game, and how they played against Alabama, I think also was one of the turning points, probably in his coaching career at Tennessee. The fact that they were able to play toe-to-toe with Alabama, and if a couple of breaks here and there, they could have taken that game right down to the wire.
Yeah.
If you do that, you got a chance to win it. So
yeah.
They're much better coached. They're executing better. They are more confident. I think they think that they're learning how to win, and those are all positives.
Yeah. Hey, Bob, before you go, just let him know now that Rob in Memphis on sidelines bet one of his traders at work on the desk, who's a huge Tennessee fan, a steamer pack of 24 crystals. Tennessee would win at least 8 games this year. Now, that ought to motivate them to win tomorrow night. But by the way, I love watching your Sunday night show. I watch it every week. And Jeremy Pruitt, he's kind of quiet, but he's got a sense of humor. But I'll tell you what, I think Tennessee is destined for greatness. Hey, thank you so much. Good luck. Have a safe trip up there. Please come on with us again.
I'll do it. Thanks for calling.
You bet, man. You too. Thanks. All right, we are going to be joined now in just a few moments by Frank Duffy after we take a quick break, talking a little LSU, and then Tommy Tuberville will be on right after that. This is Sidelines. Join us, sidelines.live. Watch us live stream, and stay tuned. We got another half hour to go.
You know just what you do to me, the way you move, shots down, slippery, cut the knife, just like the razor, rally top, and that's the day.
If Grandma runs over Santa's reindeer, don't leave that deer alone there in the street. Load him up and take him down to Dino's, where they can process him into some real fine meat.
You know what my man cave needs?
What's that, Rob?
A giant screen TV with surround sound.
You should go to gaddishome.com.
That's right. They can do all of this without costing us a fortune. They can also put in the security cameras and outdoor lighting you've been wanting forever.
What are you waiting for?
Hey, check them out at gaddishome.com or on our website, sidelines.live. That's Gaddis Home Innovation.
Your new kitchen looks fabulous. I couldn't have done it without the Kitchens Unlimited team. They captured my style and kept it within my budget. I just love the materials you used. Were you ever worried how it would look? No, not at all. My designer provided detailed drawings and made sure I understood everything. Their great service continues after the install. I got a custom kitchen with the exact style and details I wanted. Wow, it sounds like you're going to miss them. Not for long. They also do bathrooms. You can reach the Kitchens Unlimited team at 3550 Summer Avenue or on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
Now you've had a car wreck, so what will you do? Call Tom Martin's Body Shop, and they will help you. Tom will tell you how much, and maybe you'll cry. Send you help with insurance, and that is no lie. And before you know it, your car is like new. Call Tom Martin's Body Shop if anyone hits you.
All right, we are joined again this week by the Rebel Chef, Chef Roger Watson. Been giving us some great tailgate recipes throughout the football season. Getting a lot of good positive response and feedback from people. And hey, send us your pictures if you're trying out any of these recipes. Look, Roger, this weekend, the big game down in Tuscaloosa, 2:30 on CBS. LSU plays at Alabama, two of the top three teams in the country. And I think there may be some people eating crow if they pick the wrong team. But what are you recommending as the dish du jour for people down in Tuscaloosa this weekend?
Well, you know, this is a huge game this weekend, so we got to do something special. So I'm pouring out a good little appetizer for the tailgate this week. This will make game day never the same again. This is my buffalo chicken jalapeno pepper. So let me give you a little rundown of what this is. It's a jalapeno pepper where you take the seeds out and you stuff it with buffalo chicken, which is the chicken is cooked and shredded with sour cream, mayonnaise, lemon juice, salt and pepper, and buffalo sauce. And then you stuff the jalapeno and wrap it in bacon, brush it with a little bit of honey for the money, and then we make those, and you get a delicious little buffalo chicken popper. And it's really good. It's the ultimate tailgate dish, really. Yeah. So, you know, we've been getting a lot of good feedback from these recipes, and that's what we like to hear at Sidelines here with this little food segment we have going on. So, yeah, if you make these dishes, make sure you go on Instagram and you put hashtag Sidelines Food, and then we can take a look at you guys making these things. That'd be great.
Absolutely. It is. Football season is just flying by. Thanksgiving's coming up here in just a few weeks. What are some tips that you could give to people out there that are getting ready for a house full of hungry people coming over to celebrate Turkey Day?
Well, you know, in the coming weeks, I'm going to be giving a lot of Thanksgiving recipes and not just the recipes, but tips on how to make things better and planning. You know, the most important thing as a chef is the planning part. Cooking part is just 20% of the deal. You know, most of it is planning. So to set yourself up for success, you really have to plan and get a system in order of your Thanksgiving Day dinner, of what's going to go in the oven when, and, you know, things like that. So hopefully this year I'm going to be able to give you guys some tips on how to do that, and how to make sure your turkey is the best turkey you can possibly make. So in these coming weeks, make sure you check in with us here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to helping you guys make some great Thanksgiving dishes.
All right, hey, Roger, you're right. The planning is so important. People don't usually plan to fail, but they fail to plan. So we're going to do it. And all these recipes, of course, are going to be uploaded to the sidelines.live website. And Roger, I know you're a big Ole Miss fan.
Yeah.
I think this team, I know they're very young, 70 of the 85 players on scholarship are freshmen or sophomores. Matt Luke, you know, he may not be the best coach out there for a lot of people, but he's held the program together, and he's brought in two really good coordinators. Offensive coach Rich Rodriguez has brought the running game to be one of the top 2 or 3 in the conference, and Mike McIntyre's got the defensive guys lining up and playing a lot better. Do you see hope for the future, or give me your gut feeling also on y'all going to close out and beat Mississippi State and LSU?
I mean, you know, I don't mind losing every game of the season as long as we beat Mississippi State. I would just take that one game and win the Egg Bowl, and I'll be good. But, you know, Ole Miss, they've been penalized a lot by the league, and it hurts as an Ole Miss fan. And I love Matt Luke. I think he's a great guy, and he loves Ole Miss. But sometimes just loving a team isn't enough. You know, I'm not sure what needs to happen down there, but it is frustrating as an Ole Miss fan these last few years. But, you know, we can only get better. So, yeah, I really. All right, so Roger, look, I am pumped about this game this weekend. LSU, Alabama, just as a neutral, this should be an amazing game. What's your pick on the game? Who do you think will win? I honestly think the momentum LSU have got. I'm going to go with them, honestly. All right, give me a score. I don't know. I don't want to put a figure on it. I just think it's going to be. I don't know. I think it'll be close, but I think LSU will come through with it. All right. Hey, Rogers, thank you as always. And again, go to sidelines11. Check out all these recipes. All the recipes that Roger's given us throughout the season are all archived at the sidelines.live website. So, hey, thanks. We'll be right back.
All right, we are back now for the final 20 minutes on Sidelines. Friday afternoon, the coldest day we've had so far this fall, Shane. It was so cold this morning. I went to the pool to swim, and they wouldn't let me swim. The bus from the Nervous Hospital, they said was going to come take me away if I got in that water. But, hey.
You're going to put them on a foot chase, I'm sure.
That's right. That's right. It's football season. Alabama and LSU going to play tomorrow. Frank Duffy is going to join us right now. Mr. Go Tigers, LSU fan from New Orleans, lives over in Atlanta, and we had a great podcast this past week with him and Phyllis from down in Birmingham. What a sweet lady, great, passionate Alabama fan. And Frank, I bet it's going to be like Christmas Eve for you tonight as far as getting to sleep. And Tommy Tuberville is going to join us here in just a few minutes, and I'm going to bring him in on here together with you. But before we bring in Coach Tuberville, give us your thoughts and how fired up are you about this big game tomorrow down in T-Town?
Feels a lot like that first game of the century, only that I think the outcome's going to be a lot different, Rob. In fact, I wound up being interviewed on one of the local New Orleans stations this week. And like I said, the one thing that's the difference is our offense. Alabama's never seen anything like this coming from LSU. We've never seen anything like this coming from LSU. And I think we're going to be up in around the low 30s. It's going to take to win. I think the Tigers take it 30-28. I think we get a little Cade York field goal, kind of the Cole Tracy style, to win it at the end. But I think the winners are going to be in the 30s. I really do. And I think the key is going to be for Alabama to get Harris in the backfield. They've got to run the ball to keep the ball away from this potent Tiger offense. If it's Tigers, it's coming down to Joe Burrow. I mean, he is the difference maker on this team, and I expect him to continue to be so.
Frank, the LSU fan base is ginned up as I've seen in a long time. Well, at least since the last big game against Auburn a couple of weeks ago. That was a lot of fun, and that was the one probably where if they were going to slip up and lose a game, that was going to be it. And they were better than Auburn, 23-20. The guy that I think is underrated, that doesn't get a lot of respect nationally, and I think he's the best running back in the SEC, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's 5'7", Frank, and he showed up big when it was game on the line against Florida and Auburn, and the kid can run between the tackles. Let's talk about him.
Third and fourth quarter, he really took over the game, both those games, and especially with Auburn, especially when LSU was trying to run it out. I mean, he made some great gains, and he was making a lot of guys miss, and that was the power of the LSU offensive line as well. I mean, they didn't get the kudos that I think they really deserved in both those games. I think both those games were won up front with the offensive line. So, no, you're exactly right. I think the team, I don't think you're going to have to be dominant in the run game, but you have to have success in the run game against Alabama if you're going to allow that pressure to be off of Joe Burrow
so that when he can hit those slants to Chase and to Jefferson, he needs to have time. He needs to be able to go to that second read, having time to get rid of it. And what's going to do that is going to be the running game and the play action that Edwards Hilaire provides for the Tigers. But they got to have time up front. I mean, you know that Alabama up 7 again. You know, supposedly they're off what they were in the past. I don't believe it. I know they got linebackers. Moses from Baton Rouge hurt. But you can bet they're going to be just as strong as that Auburn front 7 that we saw 2 weeks ago. And LSU's line has got to give him time to be able to hit those slants, hit those quick passes.
Yeah, when Coach Tuberville joins us on the radio here, I'm going to bring him in here together. We're going to ask him, hey, Coach, how would you attack LSU? And then if you were LSU, how would you attack Alabama? He's got a lot of experience doing that. And, again, before we do that, the most serious question I got to ask you, Frank, give me the best name on that LSU team. I'm right now, my front runner is Clavon Chason.
Well, I'll tell you what.
That's the big question.
Right now, Chason's a great name, but we got a new name coming in next year that we just recruited, the Coldest.
Oh, yes.
You talk about a great name,
the
Coldest.
Yeah, he is the Coldest. That's in the all-name team, no question about it. All right, we've got Coach Tommy Tuberville joining us on the line right now. And Coach, welcome to the show. And I've got Frank Duffy up in Atlanta, who's a huge LSU fan. And we're going to get you were the coach. I mean, you've been in these games. You've forgotten more than I know about it. Pretend you are Coach O. You know him. How would you be trying to attack Alabama? You're going into a hostile environment. Everybody in the country is going to be watching this game. You have a great track record of winning big games like this because you are laid back and you were very cool under pressure.
Well, the big thing for LSU is they got to go in and keep their composure. You know, they can't go in and make a lot of mistakes. It's going to be on the road. There's going to be a lot of folks there. It's going to be very loud. But, you know, I've watched Joe Burrow. That's the key when you go on the road. Your quarterback's got to keep his cool. And the kid has just been awesome in the pocket. You know, he's not an out of the pocket guy. He's got to let his receivers come open. They're going to come after him. They're going to play a lot of man coverage. He's just got to wait for his receivers to come open. He has got real good receivers. I think this match tomorrow is going to be defensive backs on one side versus defensive backs on the other, covering the receivers from both teams. I think that's the key. The LSU's receivers made short crossing routes against Auburn, and they just wore them out. And Auburn's good on defense now, and Alabama's not quite as good. They're young, so I think that's going to be a huge key. Is Burrow, stay in the pocket, keep your patience, don't get a lot of third and real longs, just make plays, take what they give you, go on down the field, get it done.
Coach, you look at Alabama. A lot of people have been saying they haven't played anybody all year long. And you coached some great teams in your career. You were on staff at Miami, at Auburn, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, and A&M one year. What happens to the mindset of a team when they're told they hadn't played anybody week after week, and then they get into a big game like they are going to be playing against LSU?
They're licking their chops. Alabama can't wait to get to this game, obviously because they haven't played a real tough schedule. And they're looking for a challenge, and they want to show people that they got a very good football team. Now, they don't have the defense they've had in the past, but they've gotten a lot better in these games that they've played. And you can tell the speed of the defense is picked up because they're understanding the defense a lot more. They're playing freshman linebackers in a big boy sport. So
yeah,
I think their defense has really gotten better. Their whole key is their offense. Their receivers and the quarterback. And the key to this game is going to be how good is Tua going to be. If he plays, fine. But I hope he plays. I wish he was 100% to see who's the best team, but he's not going to be 100% until he gets to May. I mean, these ankle injuries are rough. He's going to be sore, and we'll see the game plan from LSU. Ed Orgeron on the defense is going to force him out of the pocket. They're not going to let him sit in the pocket. They're going to see if he can run. They'll flush him probably to the boundary as much as they can and make him get on that leg and make him throw the ball on the run. He hadn't had a lot of practice, and that's going to be interesting in terms of timing with receivers because he throws a lot of timing routes on those short crossing routes, slants, and the deep crossing routes. So be a lot of head games going into this game. The whole key, though, is the quarterback. If the quarterback has a good game from Alabama, I think it'll be a 35-30 game, and it could go either way.
Yeah. All right, Frank. It's your turn now to ask the coach, who, by the way, is the last Auburn coach to win a game down in Baton Rouge, 41-7 in 1999. And man, I'll tell you what, he's taken some great teams over the years down to Baton Rouge. Came up short, several heartbreaking losses. 05 and 07 come to mind. But man, what a series! Here it is, Alabama LSU. What's on your mind?
Well, we had some great battles, that's for sure, Coach. And I will tell you, speaking of that 99 game, if my Tigers can finally right this wrong from the last 7 years, I am going to have to ask, where can we go to get some good cigars in Alabama just in case we got to have that victory cigar? You know, Frank, I'm headed over there myself. I was in Atlanta, and I'm headed to Tuscaloosa to watch the game tomorrow. I might stop on the way over there and just wait out this. Well, you know, Coach, I got to tell you, you know, we had some great battles with you all the way through the years, and even going back to a fabulous game that we had. I think it was in '97, 98 when you were in Ole Miss. Y'all got out to a real early lead. The Tigers came back. I remember that as a very exciting game. But now, my question to you, you know, many times these games come down to special teams, and LSU and Alabama, going back to the 9-6 game, the field goal game, special teams played a big important factor, and it's all three phases of the game. What do you see as far as the offense, defense, and special teams in each of those three phases? Which team do you give the edge to?
Well, you know, that's funny you asked that. I was thinking about that, you know, talking to people about the field goal kickers. I think the field goal kickers, Alabama struggled. Obviously, that for some reason Nick has not had a real consistent kicker in the last few years. It could come down to that. It very well could come down to a kicker at the end of the game. But it's also about coverage teams. I tell you, I really like the punt returner from LSU. He's gotten a lot of extra yards. He's made a lot of plays, takes a lot of chances, which sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But I think it'll be very interesting in special teams because both teams have a lot of athletes. And that's when you have good football teams all around. It's when you have great athletes that can play starter, offense and defense, and also play great special teams.
Coach, looking at the running game, I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire a lot. He's only 5'7", but he can run between the tackles. Compare him to some of the better running backs his size that you've seen in the SEC in the last decade.
It kind of reminds me. I don't know if you remember Rudy Johnson.
Oh yeah, he was.
And he's a short guy. Made a lot of plays. Short guy, very tough, very physical. A guy that could make plays out of the backfield. Also do good things with the ball in his hand after a pass. And you know, he's a very good blocker. This kid breaks a lot of tackles. He does very good breaking tackles, doing the things he needs to do to you know, get the extra yardage. It's been fun watching him play. And again, he's a guy that just gets better and better as the year goes on. I think he's a big key to their offense, obviously.
Yeah, I do too. Auburn opened up against LSU in a 3-1-7 defense. It confused Joe Burrow early on. He didn't throw that many 40, 50-yard strikes against Auburn. They did a lot of 10 yards and shorter. At the end of the game, they'd run 89 plays. That probably fatigued Auburn somewhat, but Auburn, it wasn't like they just ran roughshod over Auburn. 23-20 was the score. A few bad snaps from Auburn. May have been a different game. Which of these coaches, in your opinion, is going to be the most emotional going into this game? You know them both.
I think, of course, Ed's always emotional.
Yes, he is.
Football coach. I coached with Bay Orgeron for a long time, but you know, the thing that Nick does, he keeps his emotions in check. The great thing about both these coaches is they're CEO coaches. They stay out of the way. They manage the clock. And they let the coordinators run the game in terms of offense, defense, and special teams. So I think that's a huge key, is having people that know what they're doing on both sides of the ball, where you can actually manage the game in terms of time and whether you want to go for it on fourth down. Be thinking ahead in the game, because this game could come down to 2 or 3 plays and two or three decisions by head coach, and it's going to be crucial, because this could be a national championship game, right? Think about that. Whoever wins this could win the national championship. It's not guaranteed that the loser goes to the national championship playoffs. We got too many good teams, so 1 or 2 plays could decide this game. But again, it all goes back to quarterback. Quarterback from Alabama's got to play. He's got to play well coming off injury. So be interested to see how that happens.
Yeah, Will.
Okay.
Yeah, Coach, I will say this: in all the years, you know, your teams, you did not get riled up. I mean, you're very calm under pressure. How much does that help in terms of transferring down to your players when they see you being calm, especially when things go bad early?
You know, I learned most from my coach, field coach, Jimmy Johnson. Probably one of the best I've ever seen. I mean, this guy absolutely could manage a game. And the big thing about several things about a head coach in the game. Number one, you got to manage the game in terms of time. You know, the 5 minutes to go in the half, 5 minutes to go in the end of the game. But the big thing is knowing how to switch momentum. Momentum is the key to winning big games. And Jimmy was one of the best at faking a punt, faking a field goal, kicking an onside kick, going for a fourth down, running a trick play at a crucial time. He always had 4 or 5 trick plays in his bag, because in games like this, it could come down to making that extra first down, keeping the possession. You can't depend on turnovers, so you have to depend on creating your own turnovers in terms of making the field goal, onside kicking it, or going for that fourth down. When they think you've got you stopped and you get that extra time of possession, man, that just kills the defense. So I think that's going to be huge in this game. That Ed Orgeron learned a lot of his coaching from Jimmy Johnson, and he'll take several things in the game with him in terms of, hey, if this thing's not going right, we're going to do everything we can to win. And he'll tell his team that. And Nick's a lot like that too. Nick's a little bit more conservative. You don't see him doing much like that, but he could do it. And I've seen, that sometimes the least conservative people do things at opportune times. So I'm anxious to watch this coaching battle tomorrow again. I'm going to be sitting right there watching it live and in person. I can't wait to the game.
Yeah, it really is. And Frank, this is what they push these kids so hard in the off season for, is for games like this. And it's November, and Coach, you're right. Weird things happen in November, and I think this game's going to go down to probably the last couple of drives and a turnover in the fourth quarter. But what an atmosphere! And how's the campaign trail going? Well,
it's going good. Yeah, I've beaten the bushes all around the state. Been going for the last few days. Told my wife, I said, we got 2 big games and come home. I'm going to Tuscaloosa and watching this thing. Of course, I'm excited for college football and the SEC when you have games like this. But there'll be a lot of people watching. Heck, you got the President of the United States going to be there.
Yeah.
That's pretty unusual. But
Hey, Coach.
He's a fan.
Coach, as a Republican here in Georgia, I hope we can have this conversation a year from now. I can trade economics of Coach to Senator-elect.
Absolutely. And Coach, man, thank you so much for being on the air with us here tonight. We've run out of time. This is what's the worst part about it. We just only have a couple of hours. I want to say real quick before we go, guys, I'm going to have a Lars Anderson podcast up tonight. We're supposed to have him on live, one of the premier sports writers in America, also a heck of an author, lives in Birmingham, teaches journalism at Alabama. But go to the podcast tonight. We're going to talk a lot about the legacy of Coach Bryant, Coach Saban, who is going to be considered the greatest of all time, especially if Nick Saban wins another title this year. And that is a great interview with Lars Anderson. He's going to be joining us. Of course, he does a daily talk show in Birmingham with Jay Barker. Also, this cool sport coat that I got in shirt, Rocky's Alterations, one of our sponsors. Check them out on our website. Been doing business with Rocky and his Uncle Richard for a long time. Great sponsors. God bless them here on Sidelines. Hey, Larry, we want you to be on next week. Check us out, sidelines.live. We'll have a podcast up tonight and again Sunday night Thank you so much, Snakeskin Cowboy, Miss Audrey, and all of you. Have a great weekend.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
All things you do to me, I never think so.